There is some new footage for the Batman 2022, which has been released in multiple TV spots for the film, alongside a first official scene and some new interviews in the French magazine Premiere. We get some intriguing new looks at the Bat tech Bruce Wayne will be using, a greater understanding of Riddler's game with Batman, and some discussions with director Matt Reeves and actor Robert Pattinson. I must start by saying, if you are someone who wants to go into this film completely blank, then I would recommend not watching my videos like this until March, but what I will also say is that most of the stuff discussed here is expanding on what we already know or have heard about. It's almost 3 hours long, and the filmmaker and crew have already said that they are hiding a lot of the key plot details, so they really haven't spoiled anything for us thus far. Still, I thought I'd address it before getting into everything in this particular upload as a pre-warning. But before I give you my analysis of the new scene, TV spots, and details from the interviews, if you want to see much more videos on the Batman leading up to its release date, including the continuation of my Road to the Batman series, then don't forget to support this video by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram at Cortex Videos, which is all linked in the description below. But without further ado, let's discuss all the new details and reveals for the Batman. So the first thing that I'm going to discuss was actually released a few days ago, but it was really our first big look at the kind of scenes we might be getting in Matt Reeves' film. In particular, the first scene for the Batman was released, playing on YouTube ads, and it includes a very tense funeral scene in which we get a lot of Bruce Wayne and the kind of threat that Paul Dano's Riddler brings. The main thing that I got from this scene is that it perfectly summarizes Bruce Wayne's character outside of being Batman. When he's walking with Bella Real and she's talking to him about his family's history of philanthropy and how he's not doing anything, you can gather that he's not very comfortable when it comes to the public eye. And once he sees the mayor's son, his focus is transferred onto him, as just in a single glance, we get a sense of understanding as he has experienced a similar loss at that same age. It's only when Gordon, the police chief, and Officer Stanley Merkel start talking about Coulson going missing that Bruce pays attention to this, mainly because before everything, he is Batman and wants to get as much information as possible about the potential crimes in Gotham City. Once a cop recognizes him, he turns his head away because he hates that persona. And this whole take on Bruce Wayne is of course much more connected to the corruption of his family in the past and the legacy of the Waynes in general, so it makes sense for Bruce to maybe feel this way. And once he hears the screaming outside, he stands his ground and acts calmly as if he was prepared. But then the Riddler appears on top of the balcony, someone who of course knows that he's Bruce Wayne, and the whole situation becomes a lot more tense. As a car barges through the entrance, Bruce immediately runs to save the mayor's son, who he had felt a certain connection to, stopping him from being hit. We learn that the person who drove the car was in fact Coulson, who gets out of the vehicle with a bomb strapped to his neck, leaving everyone in the room terrified and eventually being evacuated. This whole scene is great in acting as an example of a direct message from the Riddler to the Batman, ultimately showing us that Bruce has become so taken over by his Batman persona that he can't even pretend to be afraid. The Riddler's attack is calculated and it forces Bruce to react, save someone who went through a similar experience to him, and in the long term, try and work out what Riddler's game actually is. I thought this scene was fantastic in really building the suspense and tone of what we are going to be getting, pure cinema that is filled with great performances from the actors and very clean cinematography. Most importantly though, Robert Pattinson conveys the kind of feeling his character is wrestling with, all while not even saying a single word. I think this speaks to how good of an actor Robert Pattinson has become, and I think we can expect a really powerful, moving and disturbing performance from him come March the 4th. But overall, I really like this released scene, and it will be interesting to see how the rest of the film is edited in conjunction with this example. Coming now to the TV spots that were also released in YouTube ads, we got some new footage that gives us more details surrounding some smaller aspects from the film. There was one in particular that stood out, entitled Game, which gives us a bigger insight into the Riddler's plan. In the spot, we get footage of Riddler's wall of newspapers titled The Truth About Gotham, showcasing once again the series of murders, but mainly how the corruption of Gotham and identity of Batman is all linked. Bruce says, like it or not, it's Riddler's game now, and like in the funeral scene, we know he has the upper hand, potentially challenging Bruce to his core as a character in the process. In an extended shot of the interrogation scene between Batman and Riddler, the villain says, "I've always loved little puzzles." So we can expect Riddler's extensive plan, and maybe even the final outcome once we see the full film. And I can't forget to mention that Riddler is wearing a jacket in this scene, one that reads Arkham State Hospital, confirming that Arkham Asylum is titled the same as it was in 2019's Joker. No, this doesn't mean that the two films are connected, but it's just a cool little thing to point out regarding the name of the asylum and the version they are going for in this particular film. But we also learn that Bruce Wayne is Riddler's next victim, as confirmed by the voice of Jeffrey Wright's Commissioner Gordon in this spot, presumably happening after the investigation of the other murders. And while this could be considered a light spoiler, I would say to keep in mind that once again, this movie is 3 hours long, and there's a lot yet to be revealed about the developing plot. We already know that Riddler has worked out that Batman is Bruce Wayne, thanks to the last full-length trailer, and this is really just confirming what we already know, in that the later parts of this movie will be focused on that direct confrontation and history between the two of them. So I wouldn't worry too much about this being a potential spoiler, as there will be much more developments following this one. And finally, we get a new look at some of Batman's gadgets and tech in action, one that build on the detective type of film that Matt Reeves has tried to establish. We see Bruce using some sort of detective lens, which is also featured in some of the comics, and while I'm not sure if technology like this exists in our real world, it's the kind of thing that big tech companies have been experimenting with as technology has improved. Bruce has access to this kind of futuristic tech, potentially allowing him to watch recordings of things he's seen. Pretty cool if you ask me, as we haven't really seen this in a theatrical Batman film before. It might even work like the detective mode from the Batman Arkham games, but we don't have too much more on that as of far. We'll have to see, but the movie sets up some promising tech to be used by the Caped Crusader. And the only other shot present in this TV spot was of Batman running down a building using a grapple gun wire, which I'm sure will be as visceral as we expect, again doing something we really haven't seen in a Batman movie before. But overall, this TV spot was just a great extended look at some of the new scenes alongside the previously established ones, and it will be great to see the larger context of them come the full movie. There were some other TV spots too that might have shown the moment the Riddler kidnaps Gil Coulson, the man who gets out of the car in that funeral scene we discussed before. And there's also a moment where Riddler streams a conversation between him and the Caped Crusader to the rest of Gotham. I do find it cool that while this film echoes a 70s gothic vibe and has a grittier setting, that it's also showing its fair use of tech, whether that be through Batman or the Riddler. It's a way of grounding this in today's world too, and let's be honest, how can you do a new take on Batman without at least bringing your own sense of the technology in that world? It will be interesting to see what other tech and gadgets Batman utilizes, and also what other ways the Riddler will use technology to get his message out there. There was also a first look at John Turturro's Falcone, presumably being arrested by Batman or brought in for questioning, but other than that, we haven't had too much looks or details surrounding his particular character. And mainly these other spots seem to be building on the relationship between Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne, giving us a sense that this is going to have a heavy presence in the movie. They do seem to have amazing chemistry as the Year 2 versions of these figures. But I'm sure Warner Brothers will be releasing much more TV spots over the next few weeks to ramp up the marketing, so it's intriguing to see what footage they show off. As long as they don't spoil too much and just touch on the details we already know, which is what they have been doing with the vast majority of the marketing so far. The only other thing to mention is some of the interviews that were conducted in the French magazine Premiere, which includes those with Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson. In the interviews, Pattinson talks about the psychological state of his Batman, saying, "There is this rule with Batman, he must not kill. It can be interpreted in two ways. Either he only wants to inflict the adequate punishment, or he wants to kill and his self-control prevents him from doing so. I imagined it that way from the rehearsal of the first fight. I thought it was funnier. Something in him just wanted to slit the guy's throat. I told myself that if he spends his nights chasing criminals, it is impossible that he does not take pleasure in it. He suffers and it is a desire that overwhelms him. And by dint of knocking, his mind clears, he calms down, he reaches a state close to plenitude. I'm sure in this first fight, he manages to convince himself that every guy in front of him is the one who killed his mother, and so that allows him to vent all his rage." The actor adds, saying, "The interesting thing is that this Batman practically lives in the gutter. He's nowhere at home except on the street when he's wearing the suit. He lives a criminal life, but without committing crimes. I felt like I could get something out of that. Anyway, I could only play a superhero if he was really dirty." So on top of the funeral scene and footage in the TV spots, it confirms that practically the whole of this film is going deep behind the mask and showing a version of Batman that is more challenged than ever before. He's motivated by the moments that led him down this road, and he transfers that onto every criminal he fights. I'm sure there will be many tense moments like the multiple times we've almost seen him be a thug to death, but like Pattinson clarifies, the character has to hold himself back and not kill these criminals, because then he would be just as bad as them. And of course, Batman is going to be pushed to the brink while investigating Paul Dano's Riddler, who attacks the elites of Gotham by developing sadistic crimes. Matt Reeves talked a bit more about how he modelled the character on the Zodiac Killer. He said, "I was trying to imagine what it would be like if a criminal wore a costume in real life. And I thought of the Zodiac Killer, who had made himself an executioner's hood with his own insignia. In a way, he's one of the first real-world villains, and since he also left encrypted messages and riddles to play with the police, I said to myself, but of course, it's the Riddler." The idea caught on and I found a great interest in it. It's a quest, a political mission linked to the city, and a desire to reveal truths that must be revealed. It allowed me to tell the story of Gotham, a metaphor for a corrupt and decadent world like Los Angeles in Chinatown, while confusing Batman with a case in which he is intimately intertwined. Reeves adds that his Riddler is someone who, like Bruce Wayne, uses the power of anonymity to achieve his goal, and what better enemy for Batman than someone who echoes himself. And this is something that I was saying in my Riddler video the other day, where I spoke about Riddler being a mirror to Batman and how his costume and anonymous nature kind of works in that way too. We've already heard loads about the whole Zodiac-inspired approach, but this just highlights how every little detail, including the costume, is building on the villain methodology and identity theme that Reeves outlined in his interview. And speaking of identity, the final point that Matt Reeves went into tells us that his Dark Knight will take on a third identity, in addition to Batman and Bruce Wayne. Reeves talks about his major influences, and in particular Batman Year One, the Frank Miller comic that gave him an idea never before seen in a Batman film. He said, "I absolutely wanted to tell this new story as if it were taking place in the real world. I was inspired by the very raw look of albums like Batman Ego or Batman Year One. Batman isn't a traditional superhero. In fact, he's not even really a superhero. He's a guy who tries to settle his neuroses by playing the vigilante. He is almost addicted to it, as one can be to a drug. I had a real eye-opener rereading Frank Miller's Year One, and there's nothing functional or practical about being Batman. How do you get around town? You can't go into a grocery store to buy yourself a drink with the costume on. You can't even be Bruce Wayne because he's too famous." In the comics, Wayne therefore briefly takes on the identity of a sort of person who looks like Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver. In fact, Miller says it himself in his notes to cartoonist David Mazzucchelli, who said he looks like he won a Travis Bickle lookalike contest. Matt Reeves explains that this was a brilliant idea and that Miller tried to anchor something improbable, Batman in some sort of reality. He wonders what would happen for real, and for that, you need a third iteration of the character. So we did that in the movie, and Robert and I racked our brains about what this guy should look like. This is the kind of idea that guided us a lot in the conception of the film. So it seems Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson are going all out to create the deepest Batman we've ever seen on screen, and if they pull it off, it will only elevate the more intimate and emotionally driven elements of the plot. We'll have to see how it turns out, but hearing them get into the more fascinating aspects in these interviews only builds my excitement for the detective, noir-driven tale we are about to get on screen. But that was my breakdown of some of the new TV spots, the funeral scene, and interviews for the Batman. We are almost there in our build up to the film, and while we know everything we need to going in, the smaller details they have shown us in all of this marketing just nails the kind of approach that Matt Reeves is taking. Everything seems to have been thought about on a deeper level, whether it's the mental state of Bruce Wayne, the design of the character's Year 2 costumes, or the built-in tension of the detective film acting as the backbone of this new Batman adaptation. It's all exciting stuff and builds a bigger picture of the kind of Gotham that is going to be on the big screen alongside the version of Batman we are getting. I will leave links to all the footage I've discussed in this video down below in the description if you want to go check it out yourself. But I'm interested to hear what you guys thought towards all the new footage and details, alongside what you think it all means in Matt Reeves' upcoming film. So let me know down below in the comments section. For more videos surrounding the Batman leading up to its release this March, including my Road to the Batman series, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.